Hey gang, today we are at Mount Emblem Cemetery. We've been here before on the Silas Jane, one of my earliest videos, but we're here today to visit the grave of a young woman who was murdered along with many other women back in the 1980s, the early 1980s here in Chicago. I want to give a shout out to JT, who is one of our viewers and subscribers, Old Faithful JT. Sorry it's taking me this long to do it, but we finally got here. She's been asking me to do this for a while. It was her suggestion, and again, I did not hear about this case. I cannot believe it. I think it was because I had just gone to college when this all came down. I was a freshman, sophomore at SIU. But anyway, I'm going to give you a warning here, a really strong warning that you may not want to watch this. This story is, in my opinion, and probably others, the worst murder case ever told, at least in the Midwest, if not the country. I think it's worse than the John Wayne Gacy. I think it's worse than the family that committed the Charles Manson family murders. This is really demonic, satanic, cannibalism. But the story needs to be told, and I'll try not to get too graphic with it. I'll try to keep it very, as I always do, very respectful, but you really can only go so far to try to, you've got to tell the story, you've got to tell the real history. So let's take a walk together, and I will tell you this gruesome story. So final warning to turn it off now, all right? Okay, let's begin. So yeah, back in those days, it was called the Ripper Crew. It was so called by the Chicago media, as so often happens when you get these kind of ongoing cases and it's hitting the headlines. But it actually consisted in the end of 4 guys. They were, as I said, Satanists, serial killers. They were cannibals, rapists, and necrophiles. And we're going to talk about these 4 guys, of course, but the gang's first victim was a young prostitute. Her name was Linda Sutton, and she had been doing her job, I guess, when she had the bad luck of encountering this crew. Working back the timeline, she was abducted on May 23rd of 1981. And that spring, her body was found. About 10 days later, handcuffed, face down. She was completely unrecognizable. The only way that they could figure out who she was from fingerprints and dental records. And this is where it all started. The autopsy would show that she had been tortured for about a week. Again, it was 10 days after her death that they found her, and because of, well, not to get too graphic, but her left breast had been removed entirely, antemortem, which means she was still alive when it happened, and she was pretty well slashed up. So the bugs get into those openings, and from that the pathologists can figure out pretty much exactly when she died. So things were quiet after that. They thought this was just some random murder, and it didn't really get a lot of coverage. But about a year later, on May 15th, 1982, Lori Borowski, who it is her grave that we are going to see today, we're walking towards, and She was opening up her real estate offices. She was the first one at the office, right in the middle of the parking lot. And right there, no witnesses, but they could deduce because they found her keys and I think her makeup case and her shoes, both shoes, like sprawled out on the parking lot. One of the employees came in and said, you know, why isn't she answering the door? And it's like, oh boy, she was probably kidnapped. Well, indeed she was, because she had just disappeared. And it would be a while before they would find her. Her body was discovered, Lori. She was discovered 5 months later in a cemetery. It is said in Clarendon Hills, which is a western suburb of Chicago near Oak Brook. It's not all that far away from here in Elmhurst. And it is said there were signs of torture and the telltale, gruesome fact that her left breast had been removed, amputated, while she was still alive, along with all kinds of other unspeakable, well, we'll just say desecration to her body. Now it was really starting to build up. On May 29th, they had abducted their next victim. Now, what happened was Swee Mack was with her brother in the car coming from some, I think it was on Barrington Road, which is pretty close to the, which is going to be a Halloween. I'm going to do I mean, it was blocks away from there. And she's riding with her brother, and her brother, they got in some kind of fight. So her brother kicked her out of the car. Now the parents were following, so you go ride with mom and dad. But the parents who were riding, they were following, they didn't see her get out. Who knows how this happened? And they just drove on. So they left her there. And subsequently, the red van, it turned out it was the red van, we'll talk about that, pulled up, they saw their victim, and they abducted Swee Mack right there. And they did the same stuff, the same exact horrible things that they had done to some of the other girls. This looks like a beautiful, I think we saw this before in one of my previous episodes, that when I was talking about one of my first episodes, summer of last year. So on with the story. The victims were starting to mount up. Her body, by the way, was found about 4 months later. And you have to wonder, how does her brother feel even today to live with that? Now, 2 weeks later, after they had abducted Swee Mack, they picked up a woman named Angel York, and they handcuffed her. They slashed her up. Same thing with her breast. And they threw her out of the van while she was still alive. That's right. She survived. She was pretty messed up in the hospital. Police were dying to figure out what happened. I don't think she could talk. She had to use sign language, but they deduced that, well, like the others, But more detail, they had forced her to cut her own breast off with a large knife, which apparently had aroused them. Pretty sick. The man who was most aroused took the knife away from her, and then he slashed her up more, and then he masturbated in the wound, if you can believe that. They were traveling at a high rate of speed, speeding down probably 60, 70 miles an hour. She's handcuffed, and they opened the van, the back doors, and they just threw her out, figuring, well, she's not going to survive that. Well, she did. On August 28th, the body of another victim, Sandra Delaware, was discovered on the bank of the Chicago River. Even worse unspeakable things. And I'm not going to say, but other than to say things were put inside her. Her bra was wrapped around her neck. And as with the others, her left breast had been completely removed. A few days later, another one, September 8th, 31-year-old Rosebeck Davis was found in an alley. Same stuff, except this time her face had been destroyed with a hatchet. That's right. Well, everybody, the police, they knew now we had a serial killer satanic group, knew this was a very serious issue, problem, and they needed to get a break, but they were not getting a break. But finally, there was a break. Beverly Washington, another prostitute, was found by the railroad tracks just before Christmas. In addition to the other injuries as usual, her breast had been amputated. She was alive, and she had some details to share. She was forced at gunpoint to swallow pills. Then she was taken to a bedroom, tied to the bed and gang raped by 4 men. At some point, one of the men wrapped the piano wire around her left breast, pulling tighter and tighter until the pain was so bad she just passed out. The next thing she remembered, she woke up at the tracks. Now, she was able to give a description of the van and inside. She said, hey, you know what? That van had a plywood panel between the 2 seats in the back with a door, like a secret room. That's where I was. But I could see when the door was open, the rear view mirror had a roach clip hanging with 3 feathers. I think 1 was blue and 2 was white. It might be backwards, but she saw that. Well, they actually, shortly thereafter, found a van driving that matched the description, and they pulled it over. A guy named Edward Spreitzer was driving. He was alone, and he quickly freaked out. It was clear that he was super nervous. Something was going on with him, and they got him back to the station, and he confessed. Told him everything. He said, it's this Robin Gecht. He's the boss. He's the Satan. I'm afraid of him. He's going to kill me. Well, Robin Gecht was a family man. He was married. He had 3 children. 3 children. He was brought in, but from lack of evidence, he was initially released. Finally, to make a long story short, 4 guys were arrested. They all started caving in. Thomas Kokoraleis would flip. It was Kokoraleis. It was Edward Spreitzer, Andrew Kokoraleis, and of course Robin. They were all convicted. Now, What's spooky to think about, information found through the confessions, was that there's more to the story. At Robin's house, they found in the attic, kind of like a satanic temple. And this is where they would do their rituals. And it is said that there was a sacrificial bed there. He would stand over them and he'd read from the satanic Bible these verses. And that's where they would do their dirty work. And then they would have sex. But not normal, they would have sex into the wounds. And then they'd have to take the flesh and eat it from the breasts. It gets worse than that, guys. It gets worse than that. Well, the leader, Robin Gecht, got 120 years in prison. Edward Spreitzer and Andrew Kokoraleis were given the death sentences. Andrew was actually executed by lethal injection in 1999. Edward had his conviction committed to a life sentence without parole, and in return for his testimony, Thomas Kokoraleis was given a 70-year sentence. Now, why Andrew was put to death, I mean, he confessed first, I'm not sure, but that's how it went down. Thomas Kokoraleis, that 70-year sentence, well, a couple years ago, he's out on parole. That's right, guys. He's out living his freedom. And he served about half his sentence, and he's been giving TV interviews. And in the interviews, he said, hey, I'm a changed man, and you need to feel sorry for me because I'm being shunned and pushed out of wherever I want to live. Leader Robin Gecht was given 120 years. Yet, can you believe this? Next year, he is eligible for parole, 2022. Now, I don't understand. I'm just going to inject my own opinion here. That's like 1/4 of his time. Is that what parole is at now? Eligibility? You can serve 1/4 your time and get out? Seems like a joke to me. His ex-wife still has a 1-inch scar on her left breast as a memento, and of course that satanic attic, was that just something made up? Because his wife even today says he's innocent, and we can't wait for him to get out so we can live our lives. Now, these men have been suspected in more murders, 15, because Robin had a hope chest, and the hope chest had 15 breasts. 15 breasts. Can you believe it? That's right. Well, here are the graves of the parents and Lori. Right here. I'm not going to show the mother's. Let's keep this to the side, because when we get close, her birthday is shown. Let's see if I can do this in a way. Her father has passed away, Raymond, 2006. Imagine what he had to go through. And Lorraine, I feel so bad, and Lorraine is still alive. God bless you, Lorraine. We hope you're doing okay. This is Lori's marker right here. Lori Ann Borowski, 1961 to 1982, and you can see there, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Psalm 23. It's a beautiful verse, and we see an angel and a beautiful sky and sunset. So sad. So sad. I tried to raise this, could not get it loose. No one has been here for a while, so it might be kind of, well, it's not rusted, but I could not get it. I was going to put some more flowers in. So terrible story, guys. I think this is the worst that I've ever heard, ever. Lori Ann Borowski and Raymond, her father, rest in peace.